poetry dropping when the pen clicks and poets get it popping with the pen click. You now rock with Kuya David, the pen click prime minister, out here with my brother Daniel Hees, the chubby fat god. And today, we have the Chicano Pharaoh in the fly apparel that'll read your stars like the tarot. We got the god, David Romero. Let's get it.
Jay-Z and Kanye West weren't kidding when they said, watch the throne. Pretenders and usurpers abound looking to steal the crown. From LA to Tokyo, you already know. America will have its next great white hope, even if it has to be imported. Ooh. I don't care how fancy these MCs get. Hip-hop and American music have always been black. In the 1920s, Paul Whiteman ordained the king of jazz. His crown, a top hat, his scepter, a cane, his subjects, the American press, his sound, wider than his name, Paul Whiteman. Just like Nick LaRocca, first jazz band leader ever recorded, claimed to have invented the music after hearing it playing on the keys of the pianos in the bars of Storyville, or maybe it was blaring from those horns of those saints marching in with Louis Armstrong. In the 1930s, Benny Goodman, the king of swing. In the 1950s, Elvis Presley, king of rock and roll, or simply the king. But most deaf saying, Elvis Presley ain't got no soul. Chuck Berry is rock and roll. You may dig on the Rolling Stones, but they didn't come up with that shit on their own. Neither did the Beatles. It came in the 40s from Louis Jordan with his jump blues, Sister Rosetta Tharpe shouting from the church pew, from the expert guitar timing of Gory Carter. The hours weren't counted until Bill Haley sang rock around the clock. Haley, Presley, Goodman, Whiteman, LaRocca, so many kings. Maybe that's why Lord's saying, we could be royals, royals. White musicians have been royal in black music for quite some time. It should come as no surprise that blacks had to settle for lesser titles. The Duke of Earl or Ellington, that is settling for the honorable mention, just like Kendrick Lamar losing to Macklemore, best rap album of 2014. But when you ride with B.B. King, it is you who pull shotgun, even if you're Eric Clapton. Maybe that's why Eminem asked, why be a king when you can be a god? Hey. Well, Michael Jackson is still the undisputed king of pop, like Tupac and Biggie producing albums from beyond the grave, Ella Fitzgerald, the queen of jazz, Aretha Franklin, the queen of soul, James Brown, the king of soul, Ms. Lauryn Hill, never given her title, the throne up for grabs. Each article, each nomination, each award, each sale is theft. There is no such thing as post-racial music in a post-racial America. There is truth, there is history, a line of succession, and there is robbery. Kings and queens, who will be next to sit? Watch the throne.
Hey, let's go, David Romero. Hey,
that's right.
Back to the pen clip.
Yeah. All right, we got our presidential treatment with the blazer and the presidential pen click pin, nice. Exclusive only for guests. And you might find us, somewhere in open mic with the pop-ups, but you never know.
That's right.
That's the only way to get it.
Facts.
Either be here or catch me on a good spot, just on a table, plastic table somewhere, out in the community, flipping pens to pay artists.
Yeah, and you can only pay if you give it the slap and dap. It's like, you got to slide it through because
there's
like,
a discount. There's a discount
facts.
Handshake if you know what's up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
David don't need that though. He got one already.
Yes, I did. Yes.
Yeah, he does. He's pen click OG. He's been a part of this pretty much from the beginning.
It's good to be back.
Facts.
Yeah.
And that means he's familiar with how the show runs.
Hey.
Yep.
Bringing us into the first segment of the show, Threads and Lines.
Graphics.
This is all first verse. All first verse. You about to get this work.
Threads and Lines is where we investigate what are the threads of life experiences that forge lines of poetry. Mr. Daniel Hees, you want to kick us off with what you got from the piece?
Yeah, so the one dope thing about this is it is a reference poem.
Yeah,
right?
reference heavy.
Absolutely. I just personally wrote a reference poem. Like, I know how that goes, right? Like, you're making lists and shit.
Right,
like, you're trying to consciously mention things. But the one thing that you really do effectively is use the references to tell a story. And I like how you almost went through, because we touch on the appropriation of black culture, and not only like that word's kind of soft used now, right? Like you're appropriating culture. There was a time where it was stripped and exploited for financial gain by white folks, and that's really what we're talking about, right? Like, the black arts in this country have always kind of been the root of American arts in general, and a lot comes out of that. And it's only after it's labeled white that it's accepted as pop culture or part of the whole thing.
Acceptable.
But what I really like is like you hit it, right? Like Jay-Z and Kanye West, I'm going to use this to establish this throne metaphor.
Right.
But this goes back all the way to here. And then you kind of almost linear. It's almost in succession as the history.
And really,
1920s, the 1910s, then 30s, then 50s, 40s. So it's, almost linear.
And you're really proving your point by pointing out, like, these are the people who have been crowned the king of these genres, but they're all white, even though they are like black forms of entertainment and black arts.
Yeah, where Little Richard's the king of rock and roll.
Yeah, that's that whole idea, because I wanted to write, a couple of years ago when I wrote this poem, cultural appropriation was a hot topic that a lot of people were debating.
You wrote this in 2014?
I think so. 2014, 2015. Yeah. So of course that's a little trick, any poet or, writer knows that you throw in something from the current moment or that's relatively fresh in people's minds. So that's what I did. I thought, okay, watch The Throne. I think they more meant like just for all comers and not so much cultural appropriation, but I took that element and plugged it in. And really what I was examining through this whole metaphor, the recurring motif of kinship was this idea that in music, it's, as in a lot of other forms of entertainment, it's really important to be the king or queen of something. That means that you're the dominant one, you're the one that's on top, you're controlling the dialogue and shaping the dialogue. And what I found really interesting in hip hop is that a lot of people would assert, I'm the king. I'm the king, watch out.
And it was almost it's almost like a revolving door in hip hop, as to where it was like Elvis Presley was the king of rock and roll.
And that was the end of that discussion.
Rock and roll, like as a whole, was like, that's true. You know what I'm saying? Like, really though? Like, even that's the frustrating thing about rock and roll was it's like, y'all know. Y'all really know, like, Little Richard, like, really is, like, the one.
Right.
We all know.
Well, so, crediting Little Richard, Chuck Berry, and then it originates in rhythm and blues and jump blues and
but it
folk
stops
and
with
country.
Elvis. As opposed to, like, hip-hop, where it was, from the very beginning, this revolving door. It was, like, this Game of Thrones-esque, like, battle for the throne.
There has never really been crowned a unanimous decision on who the king of hip hop is.
Yeah, and I mean,
I think Tupac, like what's interesting about like the hip hop culture,
it's Tupac, but
Tupac Biggie,
anyway.
But even then, though, there's acceptable answers in the hip hop community.
Right.
If I hit you and I'm like, "Who's the GOAT?" and you're like, "Nasir Jones," I'm gonna be like, "Yes, sir, you're right." You know what I'm saying? Even though I fucking disagree. Even though like there are people.
I mean, that's why the top. That's why it's a top 5 discussion, right?
Yeah.
Top 10. Yeah.
It's interesting that in hip hop culture, it's like we see time and again how black arts have get co-opted by white artists, and then suddenly they become the face of the entire genre.
Yeah.
But the thing with hip hop is that like you can't really say concrete in stone, this one rapper is king and will always be king of hip hop.
Yeah, right.
Because also like the competitive nature of hip hop, where like battling is a thing, and like if you say you're champion, okay, well we could put that to the test.
Yeah,
right. So it's a very interesting way of self-regulation for the culture to like keep it on its toes of like by the way, like this still is like no one's ever gonna like question that this was a black art.
Well, and it also stopped working. The trick stopped working. Like there was a point where the industry couldn't stop discrediting or giving credit to white artists. It was like, oh no, the black artists are here. They're doing it. They're out there. We can't do with hip hop what they did with jazz.
Right.
This is a different kind of thing. Hip hop is almost the one black art form in this country that is still completely based on like realness and soul and your ability to be a part of this culture and this thing.
Or the portrayal of realness, though.
The dynamics of ownership are wildly different than they were for jazz.
Absolutely.
Like, and bringing up Nick LaRocca and the first jazz band leader ever recorded, the significance of that is that because he has the first jazz recording,
he gets credited.
He gets credited as being the inventor of jazz. But where you look at hip hop producers completely changed the game in the music industry by, producing their own music, having ownership of it, and being able to put out other artists, which gave them the claim and the ground to keep building an industry out
and
of
be
it.
seen while doing it instead of. But
so
I
it's
don't
not
think it
only
would lend
that question
itself,
of selling out to the huge mainstream white record label. There are so many more options now available to black artists to produce their own music and be their own force.
Right. Like the democratization effect from the internet. Like fuck you, I'm just gonna upload all my shit to SoundCloud. Fuck you gonna do about it? Right. And that's what's dope about this generation. But also in this generation, like we see that like the younger generation, like more and more are starting to listen to EDM.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like electro and techno and house. But what I always find interesting is like when I talk to like young coworkers, like junior designers, whatever, in the early 20s, and ask them like, oh, what do you listen to? And they say, oh, like EDM, mostly EDM and house and stuff. Oh, okay, cool. Like who do you follow? And they list off a bunch of like European and white American house artists. It's like, oh, like you know that like this is from like the hood in Chicago, or Baltimore, beat music like that's from like black neighborhoods. And they're like no, like they almost look at it like disbelief. No, it's not. Fuck, like people are over diversifying, like rewriting history. Like no, and then I'll pull up like a clip on YouTube of like 2000s era like juke battles with like dudes in oversized fitted hats that go over their ears and like big ass throwback jerseys and like just juking their asses off to house music. Like bro, like this was like the real shit, and like just seeing their minds get blown. It's crazy that like an art form that proceeds hip hop starting to flip that way. Where like oh, it's like slowly without people calling out and preserving like the history of EDM's origins, like people are starting to like see who are the current faces of EDM and start attributing it to like mostly white artists
and building a false history based on that and a narrative that fits false history they want it to be.
Going to that, later in your poem, you mentioned like the whole Kendrick Lamar lost to Macklemore in 2014.
Hey, let's go! Shots fired.
Okay, so we all know that like Good Kid, Mad City was should have been like the top rap album that year.
Right. I think even the album is a hint to what was going on.
Right.
The heist.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not a concept album. Doesn't have to do anything with the heist.
But,
I think he knew what he was doing.
Right. No discredit to Macklemore because he has put in like his time in the Seattle
Don't forget
scene.
Ryan Lewis.
Even though like because we are living like in that era of the culture, like we know better, that we know that like Kendrick should have got that. But as time goes on, 50 years from now, like kids in the future will only have like like records, like text records and video records, and like who won Macklemore. So who's the best rapper in 2014? And if that was in their homework, they could put Macklemore, and they could be right because that's what the text of the history shows.
Well, the one thing though, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, but the one thing that I got from this piece that I also have a similar experience with was finding hip hop, was finding rock and roll, and then finding where that comes from and doing that work and figuring out those names. And like Kendrick, like some of these names on this list, the quality of their work is what will push them through history, as opposed to these kids that will see Macklemore. They will know Kendrick. You know what I'm saying? They'll look at a list and be like, what's that? That's what beat Kendrick that year, and they'll already know Kendrick is.
I don't know, dude.
I think so. It's Kendrick Lamar.
Because people who listen to rock, right? Like Elvis is like
everyone knows who Run DMC.
Elvis is the first name that like a lot of kids who listen to rock. Like that's probably one of the first names that they'll come across, right? But how many of them are gonna go to like other black artists like Chuck Berry and shit? Like how many of them will investigate?
I think if history had stopped with that, I think it would have been. That's kind of one of the points of the poem is that that award and the nomination in the first place is one of those things that could have really shaped history.
Right.
Had history stopped at that point, it would have tied into a lot of other things that have happened with Eminem. I mean, Eminem has the most for his albums. He has the most award nominations, the most wins. Jay-Z holds the record if you include producing. So that's a big element, but just in the sheer act of creating the music, Eminem, white artist, holds that record. Right. So that would be something that would dovetail with that, with the Macklemore, but nomination and then win. But what has happened in history has borne out a more talented, person, rapper, and with Kendrick Lamar, I think is counterbalancing that. But this piece, being dated, it does carry that weight of people, kind of looking back and being like, well, what does that mean?
But I think that it's still true what has happened, and what this is showing, and that is a good example of it happening again, is this idea of like the clear talent, the clear artistry is here, but this thing kind of makes you uncomfortable. This thing kind of makes like American culture as a whole uncomfortable. That Kendrick album wasn't an easy album for the nation to get on board with. You know what I'm saying? He said some real shit in that album, but that Macklemore album was real fun.
Yeah,
it was a real good time, and that's kind of what they did with rock and roll and shit. There's a lot of like little dirty like references and like fun grimy shit in early rock and roll that was polished up,
subtly
and made
political
clean.
Too. A lot of it,
and it was like kind of again whitewashed to be palatable,
right?
And that's kind of what that represents happening again, because again the artistry is there, the soul is there, the passion's there. History will hold this album as a thing in time, and it will forget that Macklemore album, But the Macklemore album wasn't threatening. It didn't make America look. It didn't make us all look at ourselves and look at our history and look at these things.
You know what?
It just felt good.
Looking at like towards the end of your poem, Ella Fitzgerald, the Queen of Jazz, Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul. And like soul music specifically, it's like there's no like white face to really put to that.
You can't do it.
You can't do it.
Like hip hop, it can't be done without soul. You can't do it. Like there is something to be said about like Eminem even. There's times I've always felt this. I respect Eminem, but it's always been a little corny to me. Like just a little bit, dog. Just like in that little bit of a way. And it's just that. It's a cultural thing. It's like black people have this special thing inside of their culture that is expressed through hip hop, that is expressed through soul music.
But why do you think that Ella Fitzgerald was able to hold on to that title Queen of Jazz, and why do you think Aretha Franklin was able to hold on to Queen of Soul?
Because no one could do it, though.
Those are good questions. I mean,
no one else could do it.
I don't know because there are like good white artists in those fields too, and like.
There could have been such a social stigmata for white female artists.
How did they survive?
Be entertainers. Maybe that's a guess. That there wasn't really that competition because of the prevailing social climate of stay inside the home, go to church, whatever, these kind of values. Whereas a lot of those early jazz and soul pioneers and doo-wop. They come from touring circuits. They come, and which is very often there are a lot of parallels with drug culture, with
the arts in general.
Yeah, the arts in general. I mean, that was always the thing, and still is. If you want to be a musician, an artist, or whatever, you're going to be into some grimy shit.
Yeah.
Which
might be necessary.
Yeah, and only kind of now you have someone like Adele, right? Who's a white woman who blends a lot of like doo-wop and soul. So maybe now we've only arrived at a point where Amy Winehouse.
Even then we're reluctant to make the comparison. Yeah. Even then.
Why is it that like kingship is like so easy?
I think just knowing though, right? Face? Like people found out about Elvis first. That was why he was the king of rock and roll. He exposed these kids to it first. So he is the one, you know what I'm saying? First through the door, he is the one to them, as opposed to now where it's like it's impossible not to know about fire shit.
It'll be really interesting to see in the future, like what the next mainstream sound is, if it is EDM, and then like what is like who are the four front faces,
and who are the cultural sacrifices,
right? Cultural sacrifices, as well as like who are the tastemakers of those cultures. You know what I mean?
Hey, who's gonna hold the keys, dog?
Yeah.
Let's go. That's it. Threads and Lies. Getting it.
Yes, sir. And now we're going to move on to the next segment of our show, the two-piece combo.
Hey.
Two-piece combo!
Two-piece combo is where we review two pieces of poetry, one from YouTube, one from Instagram off of #poetry. So the first piece that we'll be reviewing is off of YouTube from Steve Colman, 1998 Slam champion from the first season of Def Poetry.
HBO's Def Poetry.
And
so for y'all that don't know, HBO did like it was like a medium run. It was like, what, 4 seasons? 5
Very
seasons?
innovative at the time.
Yeah.
Oh, bro,
Maybe,
groundbreaking.
Yeah, 5.
Famously based on the Poetry Lounge in LA, but it was like a show that was a showcase for poets, spoken word poets, on HBO every week.
Yeah.
We're about to get all into the nostalgia feels.
As the host, of course.
The mighty Mos Def.
Our first poet is 1998 Slam champion. Please give it up for Steve Colman.
Damn, dog.
I want to hear a poem. I want to learn something I didn't know. I want to say yes at the end because I'm sick of saying so. I want to hear a poem about who you are and what you think and why you slam, not a poem about me and my poem because I know who I am. I want to hear a love poem.
The whole rhyme style.
AB, yeah, he's doing like a cute little like
at the time,
BB.
At the time that
but
shit
it's
was
got
cool.
it's got kind of that New Yorker kind of rap rhythm.
Yeah.
And it's very clear he's writing a poem for the scene.
Right.
This is a reactive.
The style was very conducive of the era.
Word.
The whole rhyme style. Like rhymers used to win slam championships like all the time back then.
Can I just say though that outfit's one soul patch away from being like mad 90s intolerable for me.
Bro, can you imagine him like wearing a puka shell necklace?
Right,
It's like,
dog?
He looks like a survivor in a post-apocalyptic wasteland.
Or a reject from a 90s boy band.
Sad poem, and I hate my dad poem, a dream poem, and I'm not what I seem poem, and I need poem, and I also bleed poem, and I'm alone poem, and I can't find my home poem. I just want to hear a poem. I want to hear a poem about revolution, about fists raised high and hips twisting in a rumble like a Roomba. I want to follow the
pause in his delivery style.
I want to hear a love poem, a sad poem, and I hate my dad poem, a dream poem, and I'm not what I seem poem, and I need poem, and I also bleed poem, and I'm alone poem, and I can't find my home poem. I just want to hear a poem. I want to hear a poem about revolution, about fists raised high and hips twisting in a rumble like a Roomba. I want to follow the footsteps.
Day, dog. When I first heard this, right?
Because you used to fuck with this poem heavy, right?
Yeah, okay. So this was like one of my fucking jams.
You would burn it to CDs on Nero.
I used to make mixtape for girls, right? Like, you slide that mixtape over, and I used to like throw in a little bit of Def Poetry in there, and like this was one of the jams, dog.
How did you find it? Like did you like download Kazaa?
I would either Kazaa them, or I would literally make like copies.
And then you would
Poetry.
would you like extract the audio through Cool Edit Pro and then burn it to Nero?
I used to hook up the audio out on my VCR to my 4-track.
Tight.
And then I would take the tape and I would take it to the homie who had like a big just a setup, an analog setup, and then I would put that onto a CD. Boom. I got mad bootlegs.
See, that's all the work.
This guy's
Come on, y'all.
This guy's chin is like strong as fuck.
That to say though,
Look at that.
this was one of those poems that I used to fuck with back in the day hard, and I could say that now, fucking 20 fucking years later, Rumble and Roomba and that little wordplay still sticks on my head.
Yeah, and that's very New York too. That's tying into
Roomba.
Latin
With a
culture.
fist raised like a rumble. What does he say?
Is he talking about
And-
Home poem. I just want to hear a poem. I want to hear a poem about revolution, about fists raised high and hips twisting in a rumble like a Roomba. I want to follow
Roomba like a Roomba. Is he talking about Roomba? Like
with
the
hips twisting like
So
a
it's
rumble.
like a style of dance. So he's relating revolution to dancing. So
I was thinking like the robot vacuum cleaner.
So it's like culture
No. Did
they have
is
that back then?
protest.
No.
I'm sorry. I didn't know shit. Sorry, I didn't know shit.
And then what he ends up doing is he does something very difficult, and he rhymes Roomba with Lumumba, who was a political leader in Africa.
Yeah, but damn, look at those sideburns though. Still,
Bro, that vest, dog. That vest.
the footsteps of Che and hear the truth about the day the CIA killed Lumumba.
Yeah.
I want to hear a poem about struggle so that when I open my mouth, I can step outside myself. I want to listen to no less than the sounds of protest. in the factories where workers sweat and make Air Jordans and Pro Keds, because if you want to take
90s
shots
right there, the anti-sweatshop movement, Kathy Lee Gifford,
Pro Keds, bro.
yeah,
in general.
Nike, number
Also,
of
he kind of contradicts
scandals.
himself because he spends the whole beginning of this poem being like, I want to hear a poem about everything, about like your dark, and then he's like, and then I want to hear no less than protest poetry. Like, whoa, bro, what happened to the love poem and the other shit? Like, what?
Oh, wow.
Because now he's in the I'm trying to sound deep, like bag.
For the cause.
Yeah.
shots at people, target Phil Knight and Bill Gates, contemplate how they own the products and they got the goods, how they act like they care, but they're just Robin Hoods.
Oh, of course, Robin Hood, Robin of Blacksley, the reverse.
And because every second matters, I want to hear long poems and short poems about time and its limits, because it took less than 3 minutes to attack Abner Louima, to frame Assata Shakur and destroy Hiroshima, to kill Eleanor Bumpers and Anthony Baez, to gun down Malcolm with bullets they bought from the feds.
And I really like whenever you write something like this, right? It's usually a list again, like you're making references and things like that. But that little line that he did felt like it was inspired by the words. You know what I'm saying? It didn't feel like it was like, how do I get these references in here? I felt like it was somewhat organic.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then it so happened to just really work well for the piece, but it feels more organic than what you would normally do with the reference.
Yo, look at my man's face right here.
I just
Looks like he's about to sneeze.
once again, as a Latino, I appreciate Anthony Baez. I have no idea who the fuck that is, but I appreciate the shout out to
Abner
someone brown.
Louima, to frame Assata Shakur and destroy Hiroshima, to kill Eleanor Bumpers and Anthony Baez, to gun down Malcolm with bullets they bought from the feds. I want to hear a poem where ideas kiss similes so deeply that metaphors get jealous.
Where ideas
swag.
kiss
Oh,
simile.
there
I want to hear a poem. What do you say that where ideas kiss similes so sweetly that they make metaphors
What's
jealous?
Yeah,
Yeah.
metaphors.
Okay,
yeah, jealous. Yeah.
Like I said, like when I was in college, I had like a similar line, like rhyme so unique, metaphors use me as a simile. It doesn't mean shit.
Yeah,
It just sounds cool.
But if you say it right, you know what I'm saying?
That sounds pretty. I really appreciate that line because that's line fucking with poetic language, bringing up poetic language. I mean, it's a very
Masturbatory.
it is very indulgent. Yeah, it's very masturbatory.
But who in that room is going to go home and be like, what is a simile? And I'm going to find out.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like to his credit, you could say that like he's listing off a lot of names, and he's like, okay, well, they couldn't really Google at the time, but like they could like go to a library and open an Encyclopedia Britannica and possibly like research these names,
Or get their free AOL trial disc and go home.
or in their Encyclopedia Encarta on their Windows 95 machine.
Shit, son. With the pictures. With pictures.
this is
Let's go.
Where the subject matters so much that adjectives start holding pronoun rallies at City Hall.
Where the subject matters so much that adjectives
subject
start holding pronoun rallies.
So it's tying in.
Fuck outta here, bruh.
Political, you know.
Where the subject.
This is early word association schemes that like don't really make sense, but it just sounds cool.
Yeah.
It kind of makes sense. It's
I like
lit,
that.
though.
I like the
Because I want to hear a poem that attacks the
has a
status
very,
quo,
like,
that attracts
unthreatening
the
thing
claps,
to
the
him
cat.
that I'm like willing to forgive a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like his whole demeanor and stuff like that. He is creating like a very fun
All right,
way to
Mr.
frame
Steve
this.
Colman, apologist. Let's get to the poem.
It start
I'm just saying,
holding
I think you're cute,
pronoun
Mr.
rallies
Coleman.
at City Hall. Because I want to hear a poem that attacks the status quo, that attracts the claps of the cats with the fattest flows, that makes the crowd pass the hat and pack my cap with a stack of dough. I want to hear a poem that makes this audience yell, ho!
When you feature at a venue, they pass around a basket like church. You know, that was one of the things. So you would, the better you did as a feature, the more money you would get in the hat.
But nobody has said fattest flow since like Freestyle Fellowship. It made it sound cool.
Like,
you know what I'm saying?
it's on
Pyro
the
is like
level
the last
of like
ones.
those rhymes that were typed back then, like flipping and dipping.
Yeah.
Like
I'm
what the
flipping
fuck?
and dipping and skipping and ripping. Like, whoa, no, you're just saying rhyming
Word.
words. Fattest flow.
Stacking and macking. Like word. Okay.
Stacking and macking.
Because I want to guess your favorite color, then craft rhyme schemes out of thin air. I want to hear a poem about why the statute of limitations for rape is only 5 years. I want to hear a poem. I want to feel a poem. I want to taste the poem. Give me your spot on the mic if you want to waste a poem. I want to hear a poem.
I like how at the end too he said, "Give me your spot on the mic if you want to waste a poem, like kind of like a shout out or like a shot.
All right,
You
so
better be good, dog.
as is customary on two-piece combo, we give every piece that we review a score out of 10. So that being said, Mr. Romero.
Yeah. So it was actually my idea.
Yeah, facts.
To put this poem on. I thought Def Poetry season 1.
Right.
And we saw it and we thought this is a classic. We've got to review this.
It hit me in the member feels real hard.
And I was very glad.
And over 21 years, much like a fine whiskey,
Did
it mellow? Did it have? It has a lot of hints of vanilla for sure.
Right. Hey.
But yo, how do you feel about it now? Retroactively.
Yeah, no, seriously, I would not, put this in the upper echelons. I'm going to give this like a 7.
Okay.
So this is a poem, when you're looking at a slam and slam scores, this is not something that I'm like eager to advance this poet.
No, not at all.
But this is like a very pleasant 7.
Right.
This is like the 7 that you put on to kick off your open mic or someone
your
says,
feature, like the first one in your feature.
Right.
Shit.
Right. What is slam poetry? To show someone like, here's an example, I said, it's very non-threatening.
The showmanship is clearly there, like in Aces, where like he has that little crowd call out, like everyone say "Oh!" And he has a good crowd control, so you can see that the fundamentals of performance poetry are there.
Yeah.
It's just like the text itself hasn't really aged that well.
Yeah, I feel you.
Right.
So speaking of aging well, Mr. Daniel, who used to love the shit out of us, who went through the efforts of going from analog recording to re-recording to digital.
Analog to digital.
So
AAD.
How do you feel about this now, and what do you score about this in 2019?
So I got to thank Mr. Colman and all of the HBO Def Poetry folks, because I used to throw these on mixtapes and get little girlfriends back in the day to think that I was smarter than I was. It definitely hits me in the nostalgia feels. Like it makes me miss having something like Def Poetry a lot. Yeah. Like what a dope thing that was. Like this high caliber, high stage thing where we got to see people do poetry. How dope was that? It does feel dated, but if you do understand the context of poetry and like you have been involved since this time, even you do understand why it feels dated and its place in history. So I'm going to give it a little bit of room there. If I saw this at an open mic and I knew the cat was a poet, if he walked in and he was like, I was like, he's a poet, right? This guy's a poet. He's going to go do a poem. I would be like, fuck yeah, that's dope. If this was at a slam and this was round 1, I'm going to give you a 7.4. I'm gonna give you a 7.4, and I'm gonna be like,
"Hey, sure you don't want to rate that higher? Because you just like say how you feel, bro." It's like if
7.4.
You still love it.
Fair.
All right, cool.
Yeah. I love it. That's fine. I could love a 7.4.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
I'm a hard 6.5. So what are you gonna do?
But yeah,
but yeah, no, I think 7.4 is fair. It hit me in the feels. I'll always love it in a special way. But it is what it is.
It'll always be a 9.8.
Yeah, but that's really. I'm trying to count for that in my head and not be like a 10.
But objectively, I think
a 7.4 is
the
fair.
current moment.
all right. So I get the idea, and I kind of get like what he's trying to go for. But that being said, like having never seen this before, and this is my first time seeing it and hearing it, like not really fucking with the style, which is interesting because I love rhyming in poetry, and like, but it's just that it's not good rhyming.
Right, he didn't do a lot of it either.
There are not many multi-syllables.
There's almost no multi.
Or surprising rhymes. Like, wow, you were able to rime this with that.
Yeah,
right.
Like none of that. So like a lot of bait rhymes, and for that, but like the showmanship is there, and like I gotta give him points for that. Like, okay, well at least he knows how to rock the crowd. That being said, like the poetry itself is like very dated. 5.
5, that's fair.
Yeah,
that seems fair.
And it's hard because like in a slam scale, like probably like a 6.5 or to a soft 7 is more appropriate.
Right.
But just how I feel about it, 5.
Word. Yeah, no, that's fair. I feel that.
For sure. So that was the first piece of the 2-piece combo from Steve Colman, 1998 slam champion, with his piece, I Want to Hear a Poem. Should check it out on YouTube.
Poetry, y'all.
Yes, sir. Now we're going on to our second piece of the 2-piece combo, where we take a look at #poetry on Instagram. So be sure to follow us on Instagram at PenClique, PenClique. Check out this poem review. And usually on Instagram, we find a lot of trash.
Hey,
But
that's usually the way it
sometimes
goes.
there are good poems. So if
Hey.
you want to see, is this going to be typical trash or is this going to be
Whoa.
actually decent?
The suspense is
be,
killing me.
be sure to follow us on Instagram at PenClick to see what's up. So today's Instagram poem is a repost of Cassandra Hale's poem. And this is posted by Supernatural Huntress. Shout out to you for spreading your favorite poetry.
Yeah.
We're actually going to see if it's any good or not. Hopefully it is because you took the time to repost their shit.
Hey.
Mr. David Romero, could you do the honor of reading our IG poem?
With your bones wrapped around me, I'm leaving. I pulled on your heart. You knew I had to go. I was never more than smoke and possibilities. Last slow dance under the streetlight. Wet streets lit up like starlight. I was too drunk to keep time. My hands shaking, pretending that I could think of anything else. I will just be that old sad song you will play in your head on nights like these.
It's kind of confusing.
But first of all, that was a 10.0 reading.
Oh, thank
Thank
you.
you.
I
That was
very much
sexy
so.
as fuck, bro.
Chilling, sexing.
I busted out the Keanu for that one.
All
You know,
right.
I did some ADR voice work once, and they had me do numerous takes of a line.
Yo,
and the line was
we got the pro reading right here, bro.
the line was enjoy the gnocchi.
All right. That's what's up.
All right.
That's what's up.
Daniel, you said this doesn't really make sense.
It's just kind of confusing. Like, I don't understand exactly what's happening here. Are we somewhere else? Are we here? I kind of liked what she was doing with like the streets, and then
Yeah.
I didn't like what she did because she rhymed light with light.
right.
Which
and
is like my
and it's
least
not
favorite
even like
thing
it's
in
not
the
even a
world.
homophone. It's just the
Street
same
light.
word.
Star
Yeah, it's
light.
not at
Yeah.
all. She just and there are homophones for light, dog. The fuck, there's
drunk to
easy
keep
Like
ones.
light as a feather.
Yeah, there's all kinds of them.
Wet streets lit up like starlight. I mean, like that's a cool.
And what does that
visual.
mean? With your bones wrapped around me, I'm leaving. Like, what does
So
that
that's
mean exactly?
arms, I guess, like pulling away from an embrace. That's what I'm
pulled on
guessing.
Or
your
maybe
heart,
it's
you
a
knew I
dead
had to
relationship,
go.
right?
Yeah.
And they're-
oh.
Know what I'm saying?
Oh,
you got to
shit.
read between the
Oh.
lines.
Oh, my goodness.
Because with your bones wrapped around me, wrapped, maybe because
I was
it could
never-
also be
Oh,
a
okay.
presence,
Yeah.
which you wrap presents.
I was never more.
and
yeah,
bones
wrapped.
being
Okay.
wrapped
Yeah.
because like your presence
Right,
is
right.
a presence, sir.
I was
Believing
never
it's
more.
beliefs. It's about the environment.
Facts.
Yeah. Okay.
First of all, nobody
pulled on
says
your
I
heart.
was never more, except Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh, okay.
I was never more than smoking possibilities. Slow dance
I actually
under the
kind of like
streetlight.
that line. That's kind of cute.
See, and this is what I like. I
That's
do
a
like
good one.
slow dance under the streetlight. Like that's a very good line. Slow
Yeah,
dance
yeah.
under the streetlight.
Yeah.
That's a good line. It's
I'm
a little
really
big,
big
but
on location when it comes
Yeah,
to poetry,
building that.
imagery, creating
wet
a scene
streets lit
that-
up like starlight.
Yeah, that we can build a world of motifs and metaphors.
So it
and
sounds like
whatnot.
you guys find things that you can appreciate, but a lot of it
Yeah.
doesn't build out to anything.
no.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it was kind of sometimes with these Instagram poems, I feel like they're just writing stuff to post, and it's like you're not writing stuff to write it. You're writing it to post and put like,
To-
it's
to
gonna
look
look
deep.
like it. And what's up with like the
Right.
typewriter font? Dog, stop it! Stop!
That
We
means
don't
good.
think you're using a typewriter.
sir,
Oh,
homie.
it
Sir,
does. It does.
first
It
of all-
doesn't make
First
you
of all,
look fucking hip or edgy
First of all-
or fucking Etsy as fuck, dog. Get out of here.
Not everybody. So some people know that like taking a screen cap of your notes app is whack, and they're
Yeah.
trying to add some aesthetics to their composition that they're
Right,
posting on
right,
social
right.
media, sir. So
You can't put a picture of doo-doo in a fucking recovered barnwood frame and call it art, dog.
so it's okay that they're
can.
using American Typewriter off of defont.com. The
I
fact
just don't
is,
fuck with it. I'm gonna say though, I'll jump in and give this a score because it is cool. I do fuck with it. It is a poem. It's certainly a poem, which I appreciate for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna like go crazy over it. I think it could have used a little bit more like cohesion and like a more concise landing point because the starting point's a little weird. Like what? And then where are we now? So I'm gonna say
Yeah.
like a 6.6. I'm gonna say 6.6. 6.6 sounds fair.
Okay. I'm going to say maybe a 5.
Okay.
And the reason why I wouldn't give it, below that complete dog shit is I really like Smoke and Possibilities.
Yeah, I like that.
Slow Dance Under the Streetlight. Like I said, I really like that imagery building up.
Wet streets.
Shaking, Pretending is kind of like, that's like a slant kind of rhyme. It's just the ing. And I really like Old Sad Song. But ultimately, why this fails is the bones wrapped around me is just reeks of contemporary cliches and a lot of poetry with body parts and organs,
Talk
and
that
all
shit.
of that stuff. I can't stand that shit. So that threw me off, but once she established location and consistent imagery, then I was one a little bit back. But the sum total didn't mesh enough to raise it above that.
I feel that.
Elements are here.
Yeah.
It could be great.
It could be fleshed into something great.
And I just want to bring up, once again, disclaimer, I'm not going to claim that I always write shit that's better than this, because I don't.
Yeah, word. I just don't post it all
This
on
just
Instagram.
happens.
This really reads like
sometimes,
first round draft.
Yeah, it really does.
And for that reason, like a lot, like again, like there's a lot of starts of interesting elements that don't really flesh out the way I think it should. 5.0 is fair, so I'll give it also a 5.0.
All right, yeah, that's fair.
I really don't like that end. Like I will just be like I will just be that old sad song you will play in your head. It's like
there's no mention of music.
That's and that's very tell not showing.
Yeah,
right.
word.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah,
Check it out. C.A. Hale, Cassandra Hale on Instagram.
shout out to Supernatural Huntress for being that fan that reposted that. Tight.
Hey, let's go.
Or maybe that's like maybe that's like their secondary account, and it's like, oh yeah, like I'm a fan of this person.
Word.
Tight.
Dope. That's the 2-piece. Be sure to go on iTunes, Spotify, everywhere where you can get podcasts, YouTube, and check out the full show.
All right, and that brings us to our last segment of the show, the 5 for Your Eye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
5 for Your Eye is where we give the poet 5 words in advance, and they have to make a poem of any format, any style, as long as they use all 5 words.
Anything they want, they just got to have every single word here. Mr. David Romero, since it's your second time on Pen Click, I threw you a couple curveballs.
I saw that. I was kind of pissed. I was. You had told me in advance that you were going to do this, and then I saw them. And they were not the curveballs that I was expecting.
Okay, that's what's up. To all you poets out there coming back on Pen Click for your second time, look out. Prompts get harder and harder each time you hear. Let's go. So I gave Mr. Romero charge. Fair. Aspect, distant, tender, and syrup. Like the maple kind. So syrup was the curveball. Like, good luck with syrup, homie. Well, let's go find out, though. We're about to find out right now. Mr. Romero.
Like syrup on pancakes.
All right.
She gives me that feeling like syrup on pancakes. Comfortable yet hungry, gooey and homey. When I first saw her, a charge went through me, something sweet and electric. Was it her hair or her glasses? It must be an aspect that denies definition but demands recognition. I'm losing my concentration because I want us to be stacked so we can drip like syrup on pancakes. Knife and fork, let's cut it up. The screen determines the aspect ratio. How far will they or won't they story go? I review her images on my cell phone and laptop, something like a distant mountaintop with white snow on its peak and the cascades underneath fall uneven like syrup on pancakes. I'm running so hot in this cold because you're close yet so distant. I could charge you for your services as an elaborate ruse for us to get together in this chilly weather. Post-holiday depression, my joints ache and my bank account has looked better, but maybe your life ain't so great either. I could fit you like a sweater in a log cabin by our fireplace all wrapped up, napping in the afternoon. Come stand side by side with me. Recharge your batteries. I suspect you're tired in every aspect. Home ain't so distant. It's here on the griddle. We'll pour the batter out in the shape of Mickey Mouse and it sizzles as the coffee brews and drips. Please don't bottle this up. Let it sit in a mug over an aroma we could discuss if there's something between us like syrup on pancakes. Something that's fluffy and tender.
Hey, let's go. Dave Romero said Fuck your curveball. I'm gonna use it every stanza, dog. Syrup works for me. What's up? And I'm also gonna write an actual effective thirsty poem right now that might actually work because my heart's melted a little bit. I wouldn't mind.
You feel it?
I wouldn't mind.
You want some pancakes?
Yeah, we could stack and be syrupy together. That shit work. Let's go.
Yeah.
All 5 words. That's it. That's it, bro.
And I just want to, give credit to myself where it's due. So what I did, the way that I structured this piece is I did the 1 word, then 2 repeat, then 3 repeat, then 4 repeat, and then finally 5.
Hey, let's go. I feel it.
We're gonna add that to the genius notations.
Word. Let's go. Thank you, Romero, for being here yet again.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Where can the people find you at, and where can they find your work?
All right, so you can find me on Instagram at David A. Romero Spoken Word. You can go to my website, for anyone who fucking uses that. It's just davidaromero.com. On Twitter at David A. Romero 84. And yeah, see me at Mike and Dim Lights if I ever get a day off from work.
Yeah, part of the Dim Lights crew, part of the Dim Lights family. Mike and Dim Lights, the first Thursday of every month, the beautiful downtown Pomona, the DA Center for the Performing Arts. Go check them out, y'all. Give them a follow. Go on YouTube, watch some videos. David A. Romero in the cut.
Yes, sir. And you can find us at PenClique, PenClique, on Facebook, on Instagram. On Twitter, we are at the PenClique, ThePenClique. You know who you are, holding our name for ransom. Fuck out of here, bro. You don't deserve it. We're gonna slice your head off like a Highlander and take that shit, because it's ours, bro. Alright, PenClique, bang bang, we out here.
Hey, doing it. Check out everything I'm doing. DanielJHees.bandcamp.com, DanielJHees.wordpress.com, TheChubbyFat.com. Check out Chubby Fat on Instagram. All that. We appreciate you. Love y'all. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Romero.
Hey,
Right.
go write a poem, y'all.
Yeah.
Boom.